Hi guys, how's it going? So yes, a lot of you guessed that Ali has brought out some brand new t-shirts and she will be selling them at the end of this week sometime. So check out her channel for the up and coming t-shirt extravaganza that's going to happen over there. Today I want to talk to you about my top 10 craziest moments while traveling. Number 1. Okay, so this is when I was working on my cattle station in Western Queensland in Australia, and I was out on a bike ride on the motorbikes. I had to follow the guy that owned the cattle station called Jamie, and we had to sort of drive up to the top of this paddock to herd some sheep. On the way there though, we were driving along an old fence line and a piece of wire got caught around my foot while I was riding the bike. Currently at this time, I was probably doing about 50 miles per hour, so I was going quite fast, and luckily, so lucky, that at the last second, I sort of like pulled my foot back and the wire slipped off my leg, so I was absolutely fine. It made me wobble a bit on the bike, but yeah, not even wearing a helmet. They didn't even have helmets at this cattle station, so that was quite a scary moment for me. Number 2 is when I went to Bali solo. I stayed in Kuta, Bali for like 4 or 5 days just to sort of chill out after Thailand before I went to Australia. And they have some pretty big waves down in Kuta in Bali. And I didn't realize that there was a bit of a rip current going on at the time. There was lifeguards everywhere and I didn't get into trouble, but I kind of went for a swim out in the waves, played around in the surf. But when I tried to get back to the sort of shore, it took me about 45 minutes to be able to get to the land, to get to the beach, and I was absolutely knackered. It really took it out of me, and if you had been sort of maybe a little bit smaller or a little bit weaker, or I had sort of been a little bit hungover or something, it would have been sort of life-threatening. Like, it would have been a scary time. Number 3 is Christmas in Queensland. I was living in Brisbane at the time, and a few of my mates, there was about 9 of us, we went in and we hired a houseboat on the Tweed Heads River, which is on the border of New South Wales and Queensland, and we hired this houseboat. Anyway, it was a massive piss up, obviously Christmas week, and the guy that rented us the boat at this place was like, okay guys, when you go out, you've got to let off a minute's worth of anchor when you anchor up for the night. Anyway, we'd all had about 4 beers already, and I was actually the only one that took in any information of how to drive this thing, and I didn't actually hear that bit about the anchor. So when we did anchor up for the first night, I let out about 30 seconds worth of anchor, thinking that was loads. And if you actually count for 30 seconds letting out anchor, it seems like a hell of a lot of chain. But it wasn't enough. We got really drunk and woke up in the middle of the night with like branches sticking through the window of this houseboat. It was pretty crazy. We scratched the fuck out of the whole side of it. It was just a nightmare. Number 4 is Queensland, Australia. Place called Serena. I was working at Serena Hospital with a company called Scott Communications. And me and my mate Brian were working there, pulling in new fibre optic cabling, and it was my turn to get in the roof. Got into the roof above the nurses' quarters, and we found some snake skins. And we were like, oh shit, we found snake skins. So we told like the director of the hospital, and she was like, yeah, they look like really old snake skins. And we were like, how do you know if a snake skin looks old? I mean, it's in a dusty roof, so wouldn't it just look old anyway? She's like, nah, there won't be a snake up there. So, okay, I bit the bullet, went up into the roof, got halfway through this tiny, tiny little roof, and what was to the left of me? A massive, massive snake. I absolutely shit my pants, because like a minute before that, we were Googling like the world's most poisonous snakes in Australia, and the brown snake is like one of the most poisonous, and if it bites you in the wrong place, the brown snake, apparently it can kill you in like minutes. So I look to my left, I see a brown coloured snake, a little bit of poo comes out, and yes, I am out of that roof as fast as I could possibly get out of that roof. It was crazy. I was shaking for about 45 minutes with adrenaline. It was that scary. Anyway, we got the snake handler out, he came out, got the snake, turns out to be a brown tree snake. The guy actually got bitten 3 times by this snake, but what we found out of him was, say you got a snake's mouth like this, a lot of the most poisonous snakes in the world have their fangs at the front of their mouth apparently, and a tree snake has its fangs at the back of its mouth, so it has to really like latch on to like your arm or your finger to actually inject venom. He did get bitten like 3 times, none of the venom from the tree snake injected into him, which apparently isn't deadly, it'll just give you a bit of a sort of, I don't know, I have no idea actually, it'll just hurt. So yeah, that was pretty crazy. Number 5, this happened on the cattle station as well, and basically, any mechanics out there, you can try and tell me what the hell happened here, but it was pretty crazy. Anyway, I'm driving this Land Rover Jeep that I told you about in my cattle station video, and I'm going along a fence line. Anyway, I go up this big hill. By the way, this truck has no clutch, has no brakes, has no handbrake. So I started going up and I ran out of steam basically, and because it had no clutch, I started going up the hill in second. And because it was so steep, I had to try and change it to first gear. Anyway, it was kind of hard to do, and I just managed to get it into first gear. But it got to like the pinnacle point where, because I couldn't brake, and I was trying to change down the gear into first, it started rolling backwards. I managed to get it into first gear, but it just started rolling backwards and backwards and backwards. It rolled backwards about 20 meters and hit a tree. And when I got out of the truck, it's still running, but it started making a real bad noise. I got out of the truck and the engine seemed to be running in reverse. Like I put my hand on the exhaust pipe and it was sucking, and then all of the fumes and stuff were coming out of the air filter of this truck. So like, it was like the engine was running in reverse, and I was like, what the fuck? And I was miles away from the cattle station, like the house. My CB radio was way out of range for Jamie to come and find me. So I turned the engine off and I waited for like 15 minutes and just prayed to God that when I turned the engine back on, it would start. And it did, and it got me up the hill. But that was pretty scary because I think I would have, if it hadn't have started and it broke, I would have been there all night, I reckon, because Jamie would have left it quite late in the evening to come find me, because like he wouldn't have worried about me till sort of then. When it started getting dark, he would have started worrying. And yeah, I reckon I would have been out there all night because I was quite far away. I had enough water, I didn't have any food, but I had enough water to be out there for a couple of days. But I don't think I would have been able to have walked back. So yeah, pretty sketchy moment for me that was. It made me think quite a lot. Number six is Fraser Island in New Zealand, and it is a complete sand island, and me and Ali hired a 4-wheel drive, and basically it has fresh water on this island, and the fresh water comes in like streams and it comes down and goes into the sea. And when you're supposed to drive along the beach, you're supposed to drive like near the shore, because then there's sort of a less of a dip like in the river basically that's coming to the sea. And the guy told us this multiple times when we hired the Jeep. And Ali was driving, we just got out and seen a dingo. She got back in, she wasn't even wearing a seatbelt, and she just drove like full throttle over this like sort of river, probably about 2 foot high, like the walls of these river. Anyway, luckily she put like pedal to metal and got us out the other side. Her head like hit the roof, but that could have been quite a sketchy time, like crazy time, because if we had got stuck in that, what happens is, because the water's running so fast, it takes like all the sand out from under the tires when you get stuck in there, and the Jeep would have just got deeper and deeper and deeper, and we probably wouldn't be able to get it out on our own. So that was pretty scary. Number 7. So this happened when I did a road trip in Australia, and basically what happened was we were driving this really shitty car, and it was a Mazda 121, and we bought it for really cheap. It was like $300 we bought this car for, like, and it was like rusty everywhere, but it got us around, it was fine. Anyway, we drove it right out up the coast and we came inland, and basically we were driving along this road and there was a lot of rain, and there was like big floods, and we were driving through water, and it was like this deep, then it was like this deep, then it was like a foot deep, and like water was coming in over the sills into the car. And I was kind of like shitting my pants a little bit, and then the alternator belt started squeaking like fuck. And basically we managed to get to, we had to turn around, sorry, because this truck driver came the other way, and he was like, oh, it's a meter high up further up the road, so we had to turn around. And we got back to this town, and I checked the alternator belt, and it was all threaded, like all the thread was coming off it and stuff, so it was about to snap. I was like, okay, well, I'll just have to like camp in this town. So I set up I had a tent in the car, so I set up a tent opposite this pub, which is on like this bit of grassland, and went for a couple of beers in the pub, came back out, got into the tent, but as soon as I got into the tent, I just heard this like horrific noise, and it was just like, realized it was water, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? So I got out of the tent, but I didn't realize that I had like basically pitched the tent on top of this like underground sprinkler system. So when it came on at a certain time, these sprinklers popped up from the grass, and one of them was under the tent, and then just started spraying water everywhere. And then I managed to get out of the tent. By this time it was dark, and there was all these eyes everywhere like looking at me, and I was like, what the fuck? And it was like loads of kangaroos trying to eat like the green grass. That was pretty scary. Like, it freaked me out quite a lot, because I had to wait for ages before I could pitch the tent back up. I had to wait like an hour for these sprinklers to turn off. It was crazy. Number 8. So this happened on the cattle station as well. A few here from the cattle station. And basically, I don't know if this is true, but I was told by the cattle station owner, Jamie, that he didn't really like break in horses till like they were 3 or 4 years old. That they just let them like out in the paddock, like wild basically. Anyway, one day we got this black horse like back into the paddock, who was about 3.5, and he was gonna try like break this horse in. There was a point in time where it was quite cold in the evening, so we had to put like jackets over the horses to keep them from getting like really cold. I was in the horse stables with this big black horse, and that sounds really dirty, doesn't it? A big black horse. Anyway, I had to put this coat on this horse, and he spun round to try and kick me. And luckily I just managed to like palm his arse off with my hand, and like just managed to like create enough space for me and create enough time for me to like get out under the fence. And I am really scared of horses. I had quite a traumatic experience when I was a kid, where one like tried to bite my face off when I was young. It didn't hurt me, but it like got seriously close. So I was kind of like petrified of horses, and I'm still not too keen on them. So yeah, that was pretty crazy time. Number 9. When I was in Thailand traveling solo, I was traveling with a few girls. One of the girls was called Laura, and one of the girls was called Freya. And these two were traveling together. And basically we were in Phi Phi, which is an island sort of down south of Thailand. And Maya Bay is quite close to there, where the beach was filmed. We were on this island, and we were there for a few days, and we were drinking, and we were having fun, going out partying on the beach and stuff. Anyway, one evening I was getting ready in my room, and Freya and Laura's room was like a couple of rooms down from me. Freya ran into my room one evening and was like, come quickly, there's something wrong with Laura. So I run into their room, and Laura's in the bathroom, and she's got her head in the toilet, and she's throwing up, but she's not just throwing up, she's throwing up blood. And there was a lot of blood. And she was like, oh, I'll be okay. And I was like, no, like, you need to get to the hospital like right now. So we took her to like a clinic, like the hospital, and unknown to me, she was taking malaria tablets for the mosquitoes, like not to get malaria, but she was also drinking a lot of alcohol as well. And that mixed with malaria tablets started to make her stomach bleed. And she was in hospital for a few days on a drip, like it was pretty nasty. She came out of hospital, I was like, why are we taking malaria tablets? And she was like, well, my doctor in the UK prescribed them to me, and she was like, you have to take these when you're in Thailand. And my doctor in the UK told me completely different. Like, so that's quite a big one. Like, I wouldn't just take your doctor's advice. I'd definitely research malaria and other sort of viruses when you go traveling, because they seriously fucked Laura up. Like, making your stomach bleed like that from malaria tablets, that's pretty horrific. And number 10, God, this has been quite a long video, sorry about this, but number 10 is This is on Koh Phangan, the full moon party island, when I was solo traveling, and I was with a big group of people, but I got really drunk on the beach one night, and I decided to walk back to the hotel on my own where we were all staying. This was actually still part of Thai intro, and I shouldn't have done this, but when I get drunk and I get too drunk, I just have to leave. I don't really tell anyone. I just one of these people that just leaves and just like, right, it's time for me to go to bed. I'm not having anyone try and get me to drink more or anything. I'm just gonna leave. Anyway, I'm not paralytic. I can still walk. But I took a couple of wrong turnings on this island to try and get back to my hotel. I got completely lost, and a big sort of truck pulled up next to me with about 10 guys on the back of it. And they were like, "Are you lost?" And I was like, yeah, pretty much, yeah. They were like, "Where are you going?" And I told them the hotel I was at, and they were like, "Okay, you give us like 50 baht and we'll take you home." And I was like, I really do need to get home. Like, I'm not gonna be able to find my own way. And I was quite drunk, so I was like, yeah, okay. So I got into this truck, and they were all just like looking at me like really strangely. So I was like, okay, I might be getting into a fight in a minute. So I just tried to like keep calm, and I just kind of like was just in the moment, kind of ready for it to all kick off and for them to try and sort of rob me. And like had my sort of fists clenched, and like I was kind of like sort of getting ready for a massive brawl basically. And I was just gonna try and take out as many of them as I could and try not to get too injured at the same time. And then sort of I can remember in my head, like that memory was going through my head, and then like the next second it was like, "Okay, you're here." And I was like, "Oh, am I? All right, sweet." And then gave them money, and they were like, "Bye." And I was like, "Cool, bye." And then that was it. And they dropped me off at the hotel, and I was like, okay. I thought I was gonna get into a massive fight and maybe die, but yeah, they just dropped me off at the hotel. So that was kind of a stupid part on my part. But yeah, crazy time, but I survived. And I survived all these, and I'm sure you will as well. Any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Give this video a big thumbs up. Sorry about the length, it was quite long, but I think they're quite cool stories. Let me know what you think down below. Bye!